Hi, everyone. Welcome back. When we got together this morning, we talked about how K-12 IT departments can benefit from project management. Then you've spent the entire day learning about the phases of project management. It might have felt like you were drinking from a fire hose. We know that there was a lot of information that you heard, lots of great information, but we did get to go through those key activities. Hopefully you used your map to start thinking about where you're at on your journey and how you're doing. One of the things you might be thinking about now is, as I'm learning about all of this, how do I take it back to work? How do I start to apply it? And where do I even get started? Because there is a lot. So we want to share with you, no worries. You don't have to do the whole thing. You don't have to just roll all of this out all at once. In fact, you can pick and choose, even start with a small piece. Maybe there's something that you heard today that could be really beneficial to your department. And it's just one small thing, like having project celebrations or writing and documenting a project charter. So we've got Rick Roberts with us here today. He's Executive Director, Educational Technology Services at Grossmont Union High School District. Rick went through our Project Management Academy that SDCOE EPMO offered this past spring. Rick did a phenomenal job really thinking through what is his vision in IT, where does he want to take the IT department, and what can he pick and choose from the map that you have next to you. What could he take and introduce in bits and pieces and just get that small start and get some early successes? So we're going to hear Rick's story today, and hopefully you'll hear some tips from him that you can start to think about taking back to your organization. And as we reach the end of our presentation, we will have Q&A time. So we're going to do this one where we raise hand, and I will help moderate the Q&A time. So I'll call on you. You can unmute when we get to Q&A. You can pose your question, and we can have a dialogue there. So thank you very much, Rick, for being here today to join us and share your story. Please take it away.
I'm trying to, Perry.
Rick, why don't you go ahead and get started? I can click for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Perry. Thank you, Terry, and SDCOE. Next slide, please. Next, SDCOE for having an enterprise project management office and then making the investment with PMI tools and bringing it and making it accessible to people in school districts such as us, all of us on this in this conference. And I can tell you that it's being used because as a member of the PeopleSoft Customer Advisory Board, these are the tools that are used to manage those projects. All right, so I'm going to assume we're moving forward because my slide is just spinning.
Okay, I will take it. It looks like you have the control.
Oh, here we go.
Got
really
it?
Good.
Okay.
All right, project management made easy, finally. So you've spent this morning learning all sorts of things, right? What looks easy about what looks easy about all of that, right? And you're probably wondering, what in the world is Mr. Roberts thinking when he says this is project management made easy? Well, I've managed a lot of projects throughout my career, big ones, little ones. I've used all the tools that were mentioned today, full-blown PMI and seat of your pants approach, right? And when I went through this academy, what I saw was a framework that I can use in my environment and be successful. And so we look at this winding path. I hope it all looks good to you all. Hopefully you all feel full screen, see full screen. All right. So we look at this winding path, and I thought, how in the world can I do this? Going from no formal project management in my organization to all of these pieces. That's way too much to bite off at one time. But what we have here is project management broken into parts instead of the whole big suite, right? Which is great. So you can pick and choose. So if we go to the next slide, I thought about, why do I want to have project management in my organization, right? And what am I trying to do? Perry mentioned vision. And I have a vision for my department, which is to mature the organization, my IT shop, from being a utility to being an engaging partner with all the departments and the schools. And I think of it as a continuum from 1 through 5. 1 is the utility, 5 is Uber, Airbnb. Somewhere in the middle is a good place to be, where you can be a partner making decisions as to what to do when we're implementing solutions, right? And I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, but one of the phrases I've heard time and time again is, well, we just decide what we're going to do and we give it to you and you make it happen. That's your job as IT. And, that's historically true. Maybe that was the case when my career started, but that's not really effective use of IT skills these days, right? So I have a vision of being a partner who's engaged all the time with the various businesses and with the schools. That probably is not, I'll tell you, I have that vision. Am I 100% successful at it right now? Not even close, right? And I've been trying and trying and trying. But that's the vision. So if we have a vision like that, to share it with my team, right? And I know that what I'd like to do is the things that you see listed on this screen, those would change the profile of an IT shop if we could do all these things in green. Next, please. So how in the world does one go about doing this, right? The start of this calendar year, we had 0 formal project management tools. So how to get started, right? The vision I mentioned, I've shared it with my department, I've shared it with cabinet time and time again, right? Okay, so I've sort of beaten that one into the ground that we really need to be partners and be more mature. Well, how do I make this happen with my shop, right? I attended the academy, and I'll be honest, straight out of the academy, I had a couple of little projects we did to experiment with the tools and see how it would work. And I'm going to go counter to the advice I give later. One of the things we did as a project was civil rights data collection, right? High value, has a lot of people, a lot of moving parts. And we did little things too. And I said, okay, this is going to be perfect. Now what? Well, in March, we had a department-wide meeting. To kind of see where this is going. Department-wide meeting. There's 30 people in our shop total. And we spent the first half of it with just the normal run-of-the-mill things. Revisiting the vision. Here's the plan for the following years out to 2026, what we're trying to do. Here's the accomplishments, people that have moved around, what have you. And then we took a break so that we could have a workshop in the second half. And we rearranged the tables. And my staff is about 50% on the technical side, meaning servers, network, desktop, 50% help desk, programmers, business analytics, things like that. Rearrange the tables at the break, reconvene, 2 people from each side at the table. So each table had 4 people, 2 from each side of the house, right? So think of the green notes on the previous thing, trying to cross-train, trying to get some fusion, things like that. So I had a workshop, which was great. And what I'm going to share with you is the workshop, basically, right? And my way of taking that serpentine path of Candyland down to some pieces that look like we could be successful. Next. All right, so here we go. Introducing project management to my team. And there were a handful in there who had been involved, right? But you can see if reading below the what, why, how, and when, you'll see some of the things I've already mentioned, right? That I'm looking to mature the organization, be standard, fuse with the departments so that we're not taking orders, we're actually involved with them in creating solutions. And how are we going to do it? Well, we've got this cool new set of tools from SDCOE EPMO, which I'm unveiling in this presentation. And the win kind of shocked everybody. I said, starting today, right? Anything new today that's a project will be done using this approach. things that are in flight, don't go back and rework, right? I saw some comments earlier. Can I go backwards and make a charter? You could do all that, but wow, the last thing I want to ask of my team is do a bunch of paperwork, because my team is probably like your teams. We're in a full-time, seems like there's an avalanche going all the time, right? And if it's not an avalanche, everybody's hair's on fire and it's a 911, do it now, right? All the more reason to manage projects. Right? So next. So what did I pick, right? Well, I selected 4 things and a framework, or a repository. So we'll go through this: project charter, project plan, status reports, lessons learned, and a repository. Where does this go, right? And this seemed to be a manageable set of tools to start with. And so all of a sudden, what I'm doing is I'm skipping on the game board. I'm pulling the lucky cards and jumping a bunch of steps ahead. So that's the tools we picked to start with. So let's go to the next one, next slide. And you'll recognize content from earlier today, which is, trying to describe what is a charter. So I pulled this slide out and I spoke to these pieces. And I talked about the charter, not only who, what, where, when, why, and how, but I like to think of the charter as a contract. It's a different, it's sort of a little different way, but it's an agreement that we're going to do the following work. And then we enumerate the work and the responsibilities. Everybody agrees to it. They all sit at the table together. Again, a whole new thing. Instead of the phone call or the email, hey, IT, do this for me. It's, well, you want to do something, let's get together, let's talk about it, let's understand what you're trying to do. Sounds like the work we always do anyway, only we do it in email, on Post-it notes, and we hurry scurry and we do it by memory. And this is just a way to create a contract and to set some guardrails around what we're trying to do, right? Fine, you want to add to it? No problem. That's another project, right? This is the one we're doing here. I have an example of that. One of our principals wanted to put in noise detectors in the bathroom, and here's the device. I want to buy these and put them in. Hold the phone, right? Let's find out if this works. So I made that a mini project. That's a really little one, but as it turns out, acquire the device, figure out how to use it in our network securely, install it, understand how it works, get them to come to our shop and see if they like it. Guess what didn't work when they came down there, right? So we followed a practice that kept us from doing the old way, which is run straight in, do all this work, and then you've got a big repair job, right? So that's a win following this process. Okay, back on track. Next. And so with my whole team, I explained the charter and I give them a little picture. Here's this little bit of a top of it, as you recognize already. I mentioned the tables with 4 people at each. So, and it's a workshop. So I handed out paper charters and the paper definitions of what the components of a charter are and the roles and all of those sorts of things. And they had 15 minutes to work, the 4 of them at the table, to come up with any kind of a project they wanted, try to fill this out. And so we had 7 tables going. It was circulated around and provided guidance, answered questions. And, we had nonsensical projects. We had high-minded projects, I'll call them. We had legitimate work projects, and we had people trying to dive in and go way too deep and solve it. A lot of things like that. So it was very useful, 15 minutes. And the key thing there was we had mixed groups. It wasn't all programmers or desktop techs, or it wasn't one person working in a corner, in their office going, okay, I'm writing this up because, this director wants this, and so now I'm going to make it. Right? We've all done that. I've done that 1,000 times and it never works, right? We all know better. but we do it anyway. So they shared out the results. So if we can go to the next slide. So we've implemented using these charters. And this is what I'm hearing. And this is a mixed set of responses. Some are from departments and some are from in my department. Thank you for caring so much about what we do and making it work. That is music. Like, when was the last time any of us heard that, right? Here's another one. This is fantastic. I've been wanting to do something like this, but haven't had the time to do so. Wow, this is going to save a lot of headaches later. Then internally, it helps to think of the milestones. That's really good. And this is a legitimate one. I really want to support you in this initiative. Help me be clear on what is a project, right? And that's, things can get tricky there. Some folks have it in their head that it's a length of time. If we think about the definitions at the start of today, a definitive start and end, perfect. And I'll call it one time, not a repeating task. We sort of stray on that. We all of us live in the CalPADS, civil rights data collection world, and those are annual headaches, to say the least. And they change every year, so it's really not run the same job again, right? You've got to make some changes. So those are projects for us as well, even though we do it every year, right? This is music to our ears, right? Okay, next, please. All right, so we've got a charter, and in the charter, I identified who's doing what are we trying to do, and we have milestones. And those milestones, what could be easier? Copy them, paste them into a project plan, right? So you can see I use Excel. A couple of, just my mimicking of Microsoft project with the WBS column over here called the number, right? It's not auto-populating or any of that. But the tasks are coming from, in our environment, the charter. And then you do the breakdown. You build it all out. Then the things that Risa talked about. I added these columns, resources, and notes, because as it turns out, there's a lot of knowledge that the people in the teams have. And this is a perfect place to put that knowledge and share it with the others. And it's really easy. It's just there and done, right? Or it's somebody like me, I can look at it and the things I know, I can just go fill it in, try to be helpful. So let's go to the next slide and we'll see feedback from this. This is all internal. I like the checklist. This really helps organize our processes. I like seeing who's responsible for what. Kind of makes sense, right? And it's like a scoreboard on the wall. You can tell who's doing what, right? I don't think they do that in school anymore, but when I was there, that's how it worked, right? So can we go to the next slide? So now on to the status report. Oh, I already do it. I send emails. You probably all do that or have heard that. So I've asked for every project to use the status reports. And as it turns out, these things are golden. If you want a reason, and this is Rick's words, and in my mind, if I ever wanted to use project management, this is the reason why. Because I can produce a status report. It can go to all the people that are on the charter, so all the contracted folks, they see it, and guess what? They are no longer in the dark. I mean, the typical IT mode is we're going to go in the corner and do our work, and we'll come see you when it's finished. Right? I mean, that sounds pretty familiar. This gets their attention, and it's super easy. I've got some folks that have tried to go overboard. Like, no. This is straightforward. Just a bulleted list. Just boom, boom, boom. Plain English. What did you finish? What are you working on? What are you doing next? What are the things that are a problem, right? Standard project stuff, but it's easy to consume, right? And here's if we switch to the next slide, you'll see what we get as feedback from this. And this is all from the field. Thank you for the update. These updates are very helpful in keeping us posted on next steps. Looks great, Jerry. Thank you very much. Jerry's the overachiever, so I tease him and I say, don't go all Jerry on me, right? So thank you for all of the hard work and outstanding communication. When did IT guys get praised for communication, right? Thank you for the good work and controlling project costs, right? Thank you for all this work. It's absolutely amazing. This changes the profile of my department instantly, because now we're no longer just the IT guys. We're going to call you up and tell you what to do, right? Now we're demonstrating, we're communicating, we're actively engaged and involved. And one of those projects, unbeknownst to me, ended up in the superintendent's board report because of the status reports. I mean, I'm minding my business at the board meeting and up pops one of our status reports and, photos of one of our projects, which is amazing, right? Even more amazing in that it's in a facility that we started using a year ago and the audio was horrible for the first 2 months. And so the board members' view of technology was this stuff doesn't work, right? Because they don't use it all day. So if there's one reason and only one reason to use this EPMO toolkit, it's these status reports. The goal. Okay, next. Lessons learned. So Lisa did a good job with this too, and this was right before lunch, I think. Again, really simple prompts. And when I shared this we've shared this with the members of the team after they finish projects. And we never do this because, we're like 4-year-olds. We're just going to throw down the toy and go on to the next thing. That's what we do, right? And we're doing that because our doors are getting beaten down to do all of these things for us right now. And, the people on this call deliver always. And we're unsung heroes, right? This is a way to change that and to be in the tune. So out of lessons learned, we go to the next slide. You'll see a few comments. These are internal. Makes sense. This helps understanding how to do better next time. Things that surprised me, I didn't expect to hear in these. Your input was critical to our success. So it's not only a way to improve your process, it's a platform or a forum where you can recognize peer-to-peer their contributions. I learned many new things, or holy moly, you're really good at stuff, right? That if you work as a team, you suddenly discover that your coworkers have these skills that are hidden. Another reason to use this platform and these tools. All right, so let's see what's next. All right, so this is on the game board, this is number 2, right? Project archive, file repository. So you're seeing, the high-tech repository we use. And so there are no accolades on this. The only thing I heard was, oh, really, Excel, really, on the network? But I want to be able to find it next year and the year after, right? And so we have a project queue. That's the Excel sheet right here at the root. And then you see templates, projects, and we stick the charters in their own folder so that they're findable. And the reason for that is this toolkit is scalable. And so we've actually done work just using the charter only, right? And it seems a little silly at first till you think about what is it you're doing with the charter. You're taking time to understand what it is you're going to do. You're writing it down, and then you're putting milestones to hold yourself and whoever's going to help you accountable. Done. And if it's a quick one, a couple of days, it's not very much extra work. And guess what? If you ever have to do that again, you can find a cheat sheet. Okay? So we keep them separate for that purpose. Okay. Okay, on to the next. There's no, as I said, there's no high remarks on this. So if I think about, how to wrap up, yeah, that's a good one. How big must a project be? It's so personal. Everybody gets to decide on their own. There's no steadfast rule, right? If it's something that, in Rick's world, if it's something you're going to have to do again and it's got some funky rules, probably this is a good thing to use, right? Even if all you use is the charter. So that's a lot of words just out of me. But to wrap it up, before you dive, it's not up to me to tell you all what to do, but before you dive in and start using the tools, understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, how and why. And I've worked with my leadership for years trying to get them to understand the need for us to be an active participant. So it's not unusual for these words to come out. So we can start using these tools and it won't be completely foreign. But if we just roll in and say, we're doing this a new way, that feels like IT is not doing something with you. It feels like IT is doing something to you, right? So maybe that's the best way to think about it. Think about how you can do this with your constituents versus to them. Same thing with your staff, right? Involve the whole department, which I've done. But as I disclosed, I started with just a couple to see if this seemed feasible. And then what I presented is my version of small chunks, right? Which is a useful bit. And then try to get them to work together. I will say that we had been doing this working together business prior to March of 2020. And so we had a 2-year hiatus, right? And so we kind of rebooting that. What's hard about this is the follow through. As a manager, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the teams are actually using the tools once they start. And most importantly, if you send out one status report, you're going to be sending them out until you're finished. You cannot stop, right? Because that's a whole credibility thing, right? And you probably saw that we branded them, right? So, and one of our guys made our own logo for our department. It's a little bit different than the district. And, it's kind of cool. Feels like IT, right? So so that's sort of a summary of those previous slides. Next up. So what are the tips? And I've talked about these already.
Get out of there, Barba.
Talked about these, and first and foremost, and this one's really for a guy like me, is be flexible. There is not a perfect way to use these tools. And the team members will be successful if given the freedom to do it their own way. So I'm not going to nitpick on things, right? I'm concerned about the work getting done and things being used, and helping them build success, right? They don't need to be held back. Start slowly and small. Choose the sizes, and you kind of get the idea of that. Be visible with the leadership. So that is, in our cabinet meetings, I talk about maturing, and I've talked about implementing this project management process week in and week out with them, so that they hear it, so that when it finally bubbles up in front of somebody's desk, it won't be a brand new thing. Like, oh, cool, this is what they're doing. This is great evidence. And then to help me when I meet with the assistant soups, we have a dashboard that is easy to use, that shows the projects that are at all the various stages for each of the divisions and departments. So a couple tips, and you can do that in a spreadsheet too, but it wasn't that hard for the BI guys to do. All right, next, Perry, please. All right, so We've talked about project charter, project plan, status reports, lessons learned, and the file repository. Guess what I haven't talked about? And I'm a total fail on the celebration side. I talk to everybody, I tell them thank you, but we've completed a lot of projects. We've completed 26 projects since we've started doing this. So there's going to be some monster celebration here in the near term where it's just going to have to be the whole crowd in for lunch, basically, right? And we'll have some fun. But that is evidence of what we all face, even when we're trying to purposefully follow a process through to the end. We still get it done and run to the next because of the demand, right? And that apparently is our lot in life, is to have that. But there's a big party coming, and sooner or later we'll start getting that right. Okay, so next, I'll share a couple of things just as a few final thoughts. I was at a conference early this year, and it was for CIOs, and there were a lot of things happening there, but part of it is trying to figure out how to get back to normal, right? If we ever had normal, right? And so if we advance one, we had 3 words: stop, which is the first one, and this is guidance for people like us, CIOs, management, people who are serving a lot of folks, especially what we've done in the past couple of years, is stop being a superhero. We really are, right? And instead, be a little bit more discerning in what you do with your time, with your work and your team. Find ways to do that. And I think with this EPMO toolkit, we collectively have at our disposal some tools that can help us stop being superheroes, right? I mean, yesterday I met with the assistant soup of education, and he was describing to me, had been in the room with 5 of his directors early in the morning. And he said, he's new to the job. He's trying to figure out, why am I meeting with somebody that's not a direct report, right? Because I'm not. And he said, but let me tell you what happened this morning. These directors said that, our IT shop doesn't ever say no. They do the work. They don't necessarily do it like hair on fire right now. They don't necessarily do it exactly the way we want because we're trying to have controls. But in the end, they get it done, always. And I have colleagues in other, they have colleagues elsewhere that are up against that. So I think our use of, the reason I share that is our use of these tools will make that kind of statement and that kind of thinking and recognition happen far more often. I don't want the accolades, none of us do. We just want the things to be done. But we also want, not to have everything be hair on fire. So stop being superhero. Maybe this applies outside of work too. All right, next one. Continue. Continue doing what? Continue being kind, compassionate, caring about the people who work with us, work for us, and for whom we do the work, even when they're, pounding on the door, right? We did a lot. We always have done a lot. And our teams have really been pushed to the limit. And, it's a people business. Everything's about the people, all of it. So keep being good to the people. They'll keep being good back, and you'll do a better job. And lastly, start doing something that we don't ever do. I mean, I just shared with you kind words that have been kind of shocking to hear, right? Because we just don't ever hear that, right? So here we go. Start taking a moment to marvel at all the good work we do, every one of us, right? Because each one of us running an IT shop managing IT team, managing any kind of a group, no matter what it is you're doing. If you're doing it in education, you've got your hands full, you know, and you're running and running and running. Start taking a moment to step back and marvel at all the good work we've done and you continue to do. You know, like don't sit on your laurels, but take pride in what you're doing because you know it's making a difference. And if we use this toolkit, we'll make even more of a difference. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rick. That was very inspirational. You're going to love reading the chat after this. There's a lot of comments in there that have some things calling out points that you made that resonated with everyone, like starting now, no better time than now, and let's be proactive, and just the leadership you also demonstrate around the vision. So thank you. Now, I'd love to invite you to consider a question or a comment or a thought you had while Rick was speaking, and we're going to be taking advantage of the raise hand feature for this. So if you've got that question, go ahead and find the hand feature, and what that does for us is it numbers everyone so we can see the order, and I'll go ahead and call on you with your question, and then you can pose it to Rick. Please don't be shy. We invite you to have a dialogue. That's what we're here for today. Let's start with Justin. Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everything that you guys have put on today. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'd like to ask, what was your first project that you tackled with these tools?
Civil rights data collection, believe it or not. There's nothing small about that, right? But that was the first one we did. I'll tell you what, it was super easy to do. It was super easy to make the project plan because you can copy all the items out of the index in the guide. So you can tell we're responsible for all that reporting in my shop, right? And we did that as our first project because the last civil rights data reporting we did almost blew up my department. So knew we needed to do something different. The next one we did was far more reasonable, and it was improvements in 2 science classrooms going from projectors to TVs. That's really the smart place to start.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. I did see a chat that said this helps make it a little less daunting, and that I hope that that's legit across the board for everybody because it really can be, right? But the beauty of this kit is it's scalable, and you can pick and choose, just use the little bits, you know, which is exactly what we've done, right?
Candace has a question.
Rick, my question is that at one of our EPMO retreats, we've often thought about, okay, what is project management like? So I have a question for you. If you can fill in the blank, project management is like, and then thinking about analogy and your experience so far and introducing it to your team, but if there's something that you could compare it to.
It's like budgeting. It's a plan. And then you go live life and see what happens.
Thanks, Rick. I was thinking more like herding cats or something, but that's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. Andrew.
My question for you, Rick, is for at least in my experience, before I was a PM as a tech analyst, I was on the support side of things throughout the pandemic, and I imagine a lot of us that were there had a real struggle with burnout. And I'm curious if you've seen a change in as far as burnout goes with your teams once they started applying project management tools and methodologies.
So I like that question. And I can see where it can help, and because it brings order. We made a conscious effort during the pandemic, while everybody was working remote and home, to stay in contact with them so they weren't just lost, right? And then when they came back, so when my department came back on campus, I found it, I discovered that I really liked being around people and working with them. And so the interaction with them has been much greater. So I think that's probably lessened the positive effect of switching to project management, because we'd already started to reduce the level of anxiety. If that helps.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
How about Ryan? Ryan, did you have a question?
So I like the idea you presented about, subsetting the set of tools so it's not so daunting. What was your rationale? I mean, what put status reports above status meetings? How did you come up with that 5? I mean, I like the 5. I just wondered like what your rationale was to come with those, because I could convince myself maybe the others would be other choices.
Right. So it goes back to where I'm trying to go with the department is I'm trying to be an engaging partner with the operational departments. So let's say I want to be engaged with college and career readiness team, for example, and we embark on a project. You do a charter to work together? Okay, that's great, but how do we then keep that connection alive? And the status report is a tool that is to do that. And I did not expect the magic of these status reports, so I didn't see that coming at all. I saw it just as this is the way that my team is going to embark on a task in collaboration with a department, which is different. It's weird for the departments too. Like for them, they're thinking, really? We don't do this. We just dump it off and you do the work. So how do we start the collaboration and then keep it alive? And the status report is the tool for that. And the people that manage the projects go visit the people that they're working for as well. If they're doing something at a school, they go out to the site. There's a little bit of visibility to go with the reports. And so it was just a practical matter of trying to establish communication chain, and it's turned out to be so much more.
Great, thank you. How about Michael?
Yeah, thank you. That was a perfect segue into my question. First, I want to thank you, Rick, for sharing your experience. It's great to get up there and share, because a lot of us, even though we're not all getting the opportunity to speak, we're going through the same challenges. We're having the same issues. And
Right.
I've worked at a couple of different organizations now, and one thing that is consistent is that IT is always trying to work with the different departments, to partner with them to provide better solutions. Can you give some specific examples of how this process has helped you bridge that gap between departments where maybe previously you were having some struggles?
Sure. I'll cite one. We are, I think, next week flipping the switch to go live with an add-on to Schoology called Education Modified. So out of our innovation group and special ed came this contract onto my desk. Hey, we're doing this. We need you to do this work and make this data flow from Schoology to Education Modified, from SACE to Education Modified, and we need it like at the end of the month. Right? But that should sound familiar, right? So I said, stop. We have a new approach, as you know, and we're going to follow it, right? And so we broke out a charter, rattled off all the things we had to do, started doing the research, and managed to, again, not everybody liked all of this, because when Rick discovered that, we didn't have all the data available from SACE and we had to modify our contract for integration services. Well, somebody's got to do that work, right? Then somebody's got to review the contracts. Thank God they gave it to me to look at, right? To fix. And then somebody's got to figure out how to get rosters across from Schoology. So what we did we built this out as a project and we gained their confidence because we were able to get things done and they were hearing back from the vendor what we were doing with the vendor on their behalf to move things along. I hope that helps. I'm looking at the clock going, 45 minutes.
I think we're going to squeeze in one more question. Emiliano, do you want to take the last question?
Yes. What, if I may ask, what project management software are you using, and what was your criteria in picking it?
So, thank you for the softball. We're using Excel, and the criteria was we have it on hand. I've used Smartsheets, I've used Project, I've used Monday.com, and what I wanted to do when we embarked on this with our team was introduce the smallest number of variables. I wanted to worry about the mechanics, the behaviors, the people, the interaction, and the relationships more than I wanted to worry about a new tool, because the new tool won't solve the people problems, right? I want to get the people problems under control, and then we'll revisit the tooling eventually, right? To something. And I like using all those other tools, but right now we're using Excel for the reasons as I just stated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick, your presentation was very insightful, informative, inspiring. So thank you so much again for being here today, sharing your tips. Everyone, I want to remind you that Rick's handouts are attached to this session in Sched. So if you wanted to grab that and have that as a takeaway, they're available to you. Please join me with one last round of applause for Rick for his awesome presentation. And we look forward to seeing everyone in 14 more minutes. We're going to be wrapping up with our EPMO Toolkit session and a day one wrap up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. This was my pleasure.
Thanks.